Greetings. In today's video, I want to talk about owner mentality versus labor mentality. I think there are really two fundamentally different economic mentalities that people have, and one is the owner mentality and the other is the labor mentality, and they both have different approaches to wealth. So owner mentality, I define it as the mentality that approaches wealth so that you derive wealth from the assets you own, the assets you possess. While labor mentality is about approaching wealth so that you get wealth by directly exchanging your labor for wealth. So when you take a job and exchange your work for pay, that would be what labor mentality is about. That's how you get money and generate wealth in labor mentality. And both mentalities can produce wealth for you. It can make you money, but I think owner mentality is the one that will provide you with true economic freedom, independence, and power. So in this video, I will discuss and compare the two mentalities and show you why owner mentality is important to have. So throughout history, the economic power always rested on the owner class. When you think about the emperors and kings of history, they owned empires and kingdoms and they derived their wealth from the realms they ruled. Same with nobles and landowners who owned land and derived wealth from their land ownership. And when you think of independent farmers, independent herders, and hunters, when they own their own land and resources, they enjoy greater economic freedom and independence because they can rely on themselves for their economic necessities. They can provide for themselves with what they own. And the same applies for independent artisans and craftsmen and merchants. So the other side of the economic divide would be the laboring class. We have the skilled laborers who would enjoy greater pay and prestige, but they don't really have true economic freedom and independence because they depend on their employers for their salaries, and their employers could take away their job and salaries, and that would put them at a financially bad situation. And so they are at the mercy of their employers basically because their livelihood depend on their employers. And then we also have the unskilled laborers who are like the skilled laborers as well. They are at the mercy of their employers, but they have it even worse because since they are unskilled, they are easily replaceable. So they have to accept lower pay. They often have to accept worse working conditions and sometimes even bad treatment to keep their jobs and salaries for their livelihood. And in modern times, even though technological change has shifted the economy from an agriculture-based one to a more industry-based one, and now in a lot of countries to an economy that's based on digitization and information and services, we still have owners and laborers. There may not be as many emperors and kings as there were centuries ago, but there are plenty of business owners and shareholders of companies that own much of the wealth-generating assets of the modern economy. And as with yesterday, we have laborers who exchange their labor for pay and depend on this exchange for their livelihood. I think that economic freedom, independence, and power will always rest on the owner class. There have been Marxist communist experiments in the 20th century on entire countries that had made virtually everyone own nothing, and that had resulted in economic collapse, economic depression, and widespread poverty. A lot of people starved to death in these communist Marxist experiments. And the only communist Marxist societies that survived were the ones that were Marxist communists in name only and allowed people to own property. Because owning property is really fundamental to human life and development. If you don't own anything, you're basically a slave who depends on others for their own survival and welfare. With property ownership, you are able to invest your time and resources into your assets and property and develop them so that they can provide more value for yourself and for society. And that's why property ownership is so fundamental to the development and advancement of civilization and societies. And I think that you need to really own possessions and own property and assets that can generate wealth for you to be truly free and independent, because you don't have to rely on others, and that guarantees you freedom and independence. There's a fundamental human drive to master space, master territory, master assets, and the drive to possess, and that is essential to higher life. I think being master of your own domain and being able to provide for yourself from that domain is really fundamental to be free and independent and powerful, and not having to depend on others, not having to be at the mercy of others, not having to submit to others. That's essential to freedom, independence, and power. And that's why it's really important to have an owner mentality, so that you can be free, independent, and powerful. And I think that for anyone watching this who doesn't already have the property that can generate enough wealth to fully sustain himself and his desired standard of living, your goal should be to acquire and build your portfolio of assets so that your assets can generate enough wealth for you to fully sustain yourself and to give you the standard of living that you want. And I think that in the beginning, if you're starting off and you don't start off with a lot of money, it may be a good idea to get a job and exchange your labor for money. But your job selection should be based on the consideration that your job gives you enough pay and free time so that you can invest your money and resources and time into building your own portfolio of assets, so that eventually in the future you can establish true economic freedom and independence for yourself. And with economic freedom and independence, then you have the power to live life on your own terms and pursue other goals beyond those of economic necessity. So I hope you found this video enlightening. If you did, please like the video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.